So my name's Chloe. I work with Zen Peacemakers International. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We're really excited to have Jill Kaigetsu Greenbaum here today. So a little bit about Jill. After a career in education, she teaches visual thinking skills to learners around the world. Jill is studying with the Upaya chaplaincy program and has a special interest in end-of-life planning and care. So once again, we're so grateful to have Jill with us today, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jill.
Thank you, Chloe. I appreciate the introduction. It is so wonderful to see you here. I imagine along the way we may be joined by another person or two as we anticipate seeing other faces. And so what I'd love to hear from each of you, and you're welcome to enter it into the chat or of course speak out loud, is where do your feet touch the ground of how we come to be here? And I was about to say, so I thought I would give a good example, that I am here, I'm here on the land of the Munse Lenape, which is where I live in New York. And yet, in fact, I'm in Belgium at this very moment, and I am in Brussels. And so that is where my feet are touching the ground at this moment. And to facilitate this, I will just pass the talking stick, so to speak, to another person. And if you will do the same when you are done. So Allison, I'm going to pass the talking stick to you.
Right. So I'm Allison. I my feet touch the ground in Davis, California, which is quite chilly today. It is in California, but we've had a good frost. And we've had a lot of snow recently, which is wonderful news for us because we're in a bad drought. And I know Jill because we work together as visual practitioners, but mostly concentrating on end-of-life issues. We have a group of visual practitioners that focus on helping people visualize how they would like to spend their final months, weeks, days, hours, and making that a conversation that is easier for them to have with their loved ones. And I love the idea of making a visual obituary. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and when Jill said she was doing this, I thought, oh, this is my chance. But damn, it conflicts with another meeting. But I'm going to do it anyway. So here I am. So. And I'm going to pass the talking stick on to Gloria.
Thank you, Alison and everyone. I'm in Hong Kong, and I learned about this program from Jill. We study together in Upaya, and I've always wanted to serve the end of life care, but I haven't had the chance yet. But I've learned about this, and I saw Jill's work on the website, and I found it very beautiful and meaningful. And so I just registered, even though it's in the midnight, but I'm still excited about it. And yeah, I started to collect some pictures preparing for this class tonight, and I already felt like this is an easy journey if I start to think about my own death journey. So I'm looking forward to discover with you all together. So I will pass the talking stick to Sue.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sue Warren, and I sort of did this on the spur of the moment. My feet touched the ground in Annapolis, Maryland. Looks like we've got the globe covered, huh? part of the reason I'm doing it is I may be in and out. I'm just a week post-op of having a hip replacement. So I don't know that I've got all the supplies and can participate fully, but it's very interesting hearing. My interest in this is twofold. I'm one of those people who, I've been taught by artists never to say this, but I truly don't have an artistic bone in my body, but I have great admiration for people who can bring beauty and the world alive through that. I have some dear friends who are artists. And I'm interested in the medium. I'm kind of coming at the other end. I've retired now, but much of my professional life, I was a medical director. I taught palliative care and hospice. So that's sort of history, I guess. And of course, as most people, they don't take care of their own house. So I'm kind of interested I've never had that opportunity for myself. And I'm often asked to mentee and to mentor rather, and to help people in that journey. And I'm always looking for new ways to do it. So happy to be here.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Allison, Gloria, and Sue. And Chloe, would you like to contribute?
Sure. My feet touched the ground in Berthoud, Colorado. And I am looking forward to this workshop today. I have to say, I do have some resistance. I think maybe looking at end of life and thinking about death. I know it's important, but it feels a little bit like can be emotionally difficult. And so I'm looking forward to kind of opening up to doing it more. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. And I do know along the way that we anticipate someone else who was driving home. And so perhaps the next 5 or 10 minutes, we will bring someone else into the fold. So thank you for sharing what brings you here. I'll share a little bit about what brings me here, and that may also spur some questions from you, which I can note that I am a note maker and drawing all the time. So sometimes when you're speaking, that's why I'm glancing to the side. I want to take down what you're saying. But let me just tell you a little bit about how I came to be here. I am a visual practitioner, as Allison was talking about. So I capture people's ideas, their plans, their wishes, and their hopes in drawings, hand drawings, and also in text. And so that is a large part of my work. And so I am drawn to also playing with other kinds of visuals. How I got here exactly is that I belong to the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, and I took a course there several years ago called Living Fearlessly, which was all about planning for our someday, one day death. And what would we do in advance of that, in preparation? And so one of our assignments was to write our own obituary. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to do something different, and I will make a visual obituary. And so I actually have a copy of it here, and I know you can't see it that well, and it doesn't really matter, but this was my visual obituary, something done really quickly. And actually, this might look like a scary picture, but that was from Day of the Dead when I was in Mexico. And this is just a picture of me working, my daughter and me hiking, and me kayaking, something I love. Also in Mexico with my beloved husband, all of the family together. Oh, and some impermanent earth art, which I totally love doing. And this was actually a visual obituary that I posted for everyone to see. And so I want to plant a seed with you, which we will pick up later. And that is, for whom are you making this visual obituary? Is it an exercise for yourself, a trip down memory lane, a gathering up of resources that you have, whether it's birth certificates or photos, diplomas, or those kinds of things, right? Or are you also making it perhaps for a service that might follow your passing? And so then it would be for other people. The reason I mention this now is you might have noticed that there are some blank spaces here, because this was for the public, and I'm not sure the public, who also includes people that I work with in my professional community, need to know all of my politics and need to know all of some of my personal facts. All right. So the things that I would call myself, and I'll say this here in this group because I feel very comfortable, but feminist, liberal, progressive, Buddhist. All right. And so this was several years ago. I was in a different place. The world was in a different place also. And so I chose to make this very specifically with that in mind. I have another copy where all those words are filled in. I'm also going to share another piece with you. And I created this. And so this is just a word cloud. Hi, Marilyn. We're glad to have you. I'm talking a little bit about how I came to be here, and we learned from other people how they came to be here. I'll let you get settled and then ask you to introduce yourself also briefly. But this is just a cloud of words made up of things that I think really represent who I am. All right. And it's just another approach, right? Both of these are visual. They're quite different. And you may have seen in the announcement for tonight that also I had one that was quite different, that had many different pictures, birth certificates, diplomas, and all kinds of things. So I'm hoping that that opens up some possibilities for you in terms of your thinking of what you might like to do. I also thought about, and this is something to ponder, for an assignment for my chaplaincy training, clinical pastoral education in a hospital, I needed to create a genogram. So family history going back 4 generations. And what I realized in doing that, and I don't want to send you down a path and lose you there, but it's something to think about for later, is how much do you know about the generations that preceded you? Because what I discovered is that I could go back 3 generations. So starting with myself and going backwards. And I did find 1 generation and 2 generations. But when I got further than that, I had to rely on other people, and we didn't have information. And so that was really interesting to me. And that was, of course, something hand-drawn that I created. So these are all different ways of talking about our history. And so one last thought, Gloria and I, being at the Upaya Institute in the chaplaincy training program, have an assignment that is due at the end of the year, in which we have to create a personal lineage chart, which can be of our own design. So it's not very formal in the sense of like a patriarchal linear chart of Buddhism, right? From the Buddha to the present. We have to have one that is patriarchal. And so that is very standard and standardized and done in a particular way for our lineage. There is a matriarchal chart that we are all being asked to make, which is not as standardized because we don't know all the women in the lineage. We know some names. And so we are creating that, but we also have to create one for our personal lineage and our foundation and how we come to be in this world and what are our influences. So while it's not the same as a visual obituary, they're definitely related in that you're thinking about who you are in the world and how you came to be there. And so I'm hoping that's beginning to set the stage and might also create some questions for you. But I do want to pause for a minute and Marilyn just say, we're happy to have you here. And everyone had just introduced themselves by just saying where their feet touch the ground. So where you are zooming in from. And if you would care to add another sentence or two about what brought you here.
I am coming to you from Key West, Florida. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
I have some problems with my voice, so I have an external microphone. I have been active in a Sangha meditation group, and through that I found the Zen peacemakers. I found through your newsletter what you're offering, Jill, and I'm quite excited to be here. I have done quite a lot of my ancestry.com, and this just ties in so much to my spiritual practice and just my personal interests. And I'm sorry to be late. I had a medical procedure to work on some issues with my knees. And I regret I had to be late. I went early to the appointment, but of course, it didn't get me out on time. But thank you for your patience.
Of course. And you are here, and that's what matters. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And so I'm wondering if there are any questions that you would like to be sure that we address during our time together. We have plenty of time, things to do and things to talk about, but if there is something percolating for you at this moment that I should write down and be sure to get to, please share that with me. And you can either write it in the chat or say it out loud. We're a small, intimate group.
If I could say something briefly, Jill, you mentioned that there were some visuals, like your storyboard, and I haven't had a chance to see those.
Absolutely. And so I will. So this was one that I had shared, one that I had made as part of an assignment. Instead of writing a visual obituary for the Living Fearlessly class at the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, I created a visual which was made up of pictures that I happened to have on hand, and also added lots of words that I find to be descriptors of myself. But there are some blanks there, and those are the ones that I felt were more private. I did post this in public and felt that I wasn't sharing political views in a more professional venue, given our heightened political climate. And so that was one example. Another one was a word cloud that was lots of different words that describe how I see myself, right? Which is just one part of the picture, right? Because we might go out there and talk with others about how they see us. That's a thought. And the visual that was used to announce this event would be another example, right? So that was one. I also had just a thought that was racing through my head. I offered this workshop to a group of women, and this may also stimulate some thinking for you. I offered it to a group of people. Women were those who showed up, which is, I think, also interesting. And it happened to be over 2 sessions. It was in a retirement community. And the first session was an hour and a half long, and we did everything that we did here. And then they had time in between, before the next session, to create their visual obituary. Because to honestly think that we can accomplish everything in an hour and a half, unless you have collected everything, it would be a tall task. What I discovered from these women was that our first session was before Thanksgiving, and the next one was to be a week afterwards. And they said, oh no, we need more time. We need to talk with our family. We need to gather more pictures. We want to find more to create our visual obituaries. And so I say that, giving you some grace around what do you have in front of you? What else might you like to collect? And this can be an ongoing project. It can be finite if you want to be done with it. It can also be something that you continue to add to or talk with people about. I think it's a wonderful communication tool. And so I'll pause there for just a minute to ask if there are any other questions that you would like to be sure that we address. All right, that was a New York minute. So that was a quick minute, but you know that is just us, and you are always welcome to step in with questions that you have. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the material that Chloe sent out to you in advance. So I want to be sure that you received the file that gave you a sense of what we would be doing and had a chance to glance at that. And so I'm seeing a few nods around the room, which is a great thing. Okay, good. Terrific. And so what we're starting to do at this moment is really dive into getting to know each other a bit, where we're coming from, how we come to be here, what we hope for, and maybe what some of our questions or resistance might be. And so these are things to be thinking about during our time together. We'll get into, as you can see, sharing what memory collecting is all about. Thinking about for whom we're making the visual, as I mentioned earlier. Are you making it for you? Are you making it for your immediate family? How might you share this? We'll talk about your ideas about what you might want to share and what you might want to keep a little closer to the vest, as I had already given you an example about that. As we sift and sort through our lives, there are so many important events. And so deciding what is represented is important and very personal. And I say that also in the back of my mind, thinking that this is a very personal work. And so sharing it carefully with those who are in our inner circle is important, meaning preparing them, right? We're in this workshop, we're at least comfortable enough with this topic to be here and to talk about it. It doesn't mean that everyone that we might want to share this with is ready to hear it when we're bursting with pride about what we've done or the questions that we have. So starting to think about how we talk with others about the work that we're doing so that they can enjoy it also and have a good experience and support us in the process, right? So I'm a gal who loves her boundaries. And so in terms of just being sure that the person I'm talking to is ready for this and that it's safe for me to share it. So I plant that seed with you also. And so we're going to spend some time together now talking about memory collecting. You're going to have some actual working time or playing time, you might put it, to work on your visual obituary with a partner in a breakout room, and then come back and share about what that experience is like. And so in terms of the materials for the program, what you have seen is the list of questions, and these are just, I would say, rather introductory and basic questions, although there are 30 of them. There are a number of them here. And I know Allison's going to laugh because she knows me so well. But what I'm about to share with you is all those questions I've made into a card deck. And so every single question is on a card. So you have all the questions. I just made them into a deck because I like the idea, and this is something that you might do on your own with these questions. I like the idea of putting the questions on cards, laying them all out on the table, finding what resonates for me and starting there. And once again, that's my process. Yours might be much more orderly, in terms of pictures from when you were very young to when you were older and extended family and all of that. And so in essence, what I'm saying is this is your process to make it whatever works for you. And these questions are merely prompts. I'm sure you have other ones that you would want to be thinking about and add to this. And of course, there's another layer that could certainly go deeper, but happily you have those questions in front of you. So I'm going to pause right there and ask what you're thinking and feeling about this process, and if any questions have come up for you yet.
I don't really have questions. What I have is a lot of energy around this, and I'm not quite sure why. And I'm assuming we're going to be getting into that in a bit. But maybe it's to do with the fact that I don't have children.
Mm-hmm.
And in 100 years, nobody who knows me now will still be alive. Nobody who knows me now will still be alive in 100 years. And
Mm-hmm.
so that, and also in Britain, there's a very strong tradition of the beautiful obituary that is published in newspapers of famous people.
Mm-hmm.
And they always make you think. They always make you think about your own life. And that's what I would like to happen here for me.
So Allison, what I'm hearing you say, and hopefully you will correct me if I'm wrong and certainly elaborate, is that you want to be thoughtful around your own life based upon other examples that you have seen.
Mm-hmm.
And would you tell me a bit about how the piece that you began with in terms of 100 years from now, when nobody that I know now will be alive and will remember me? And so how is that fitting in to the other piece of reflecting on your life?
I think it's a bit to do with when you were saying about going back 4 generations. Is there something that I can leave in a file that will give people an inkling about what I was like as a person? Even though they never knew me, they never, they've maybe seen pictures.
And
that would be it.
Yeah. Okay. And I lost you there for a minute. I think you froze up just a touch. So you were talking about, is there something that you can create that will give people a sense of who you are?
Yes.
Like a time capsule?
Yeah. I found the Quaker, when Quakers get married, everybody signs the marriage certificate. It's very collaborative. I mean, they do everything by consensus. So everybody has to be in consensus that these 2 people can get married, basically. And then they all sign. And this gives me a big insight into those ancestors of mine who have been dead for 250 years.
Understood. All right. So So perhaps we'll all keep that in the back of our minds in terms of what might you create that will survive you
Yeah.
and that will share a piece of who you are.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you. And ML, I'm assuming that you go by ML. I'm not sure. It could be Morgan. Thank you for joining us. We are happy to see you and we would love to see you. So that you can be part of this group and perhaps when you're settled, tell us a bit about how you come to be here. And so I'll give you a moment, and perhaps Chloe, if at some point I'm still going on, you can check in with ML and see that he's doing okay. All right. Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Terrific. Thank you, Allison, for that. Yeah, I think what a wonderful thought to have in terms of it's not just about me and this creation and for who I'm sharing it with now. How does it live on in time? How do we live on in time? Right? Because we can talk about living on in the hearts of the people that love us and surround us, and yet they too will be gone. And so how are we making our mark? Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about that. It's a perfect segue to really talking about writing obituaries. What do you know about that? Allison started us off by talking about how they are in England and how beautiful they are and how they remind us to reflect on our own lives. What do you know from obituaries you have read, you have written, perhaps for family members or loved ones? What are they about? How would you describe an obituary, or what is your ideal when you think of an obituary? And there's not one answer, there are so many. What would you want it to convey?
I'll chime in and say, I think what Allison said resonates. In other words, a sense of who that person was, which of course is going to be different for those who knew them in life. But, I think all of us have ties to people in the past and some curiosity about knowing them more and see ourselves going forward in the same sort of situation. What kind of legacy do we want to leave?
Absolutely.
I'll try to find a way to put this in a positive note. To tell you the truth, if I read an obituary in our local paper and it goes on and on and on, I find it tiresome. How can we capture, the joy and the essence of what my life has been in a few words? I had a friend recently who knew she was passing, and she said she had made a vow to complete her memoir. And she did, with the help of her daughter. She completed an entire little book that she published that was her whole life story.
Beautiful.
And so I guess my purpose of wanting to write an obituary is to share with my family what they have meant to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it won't possibly capture, what my life has been. An obituary is like the Cliff Notes, the short version.
And so that's an interesting question. And I hear a couple of things that you're saying, Marilyn. When we talk about it being the Cliff Notes, in that sense, is it the highlights? Or is it the important pieces? And maybe those are the same things. So how do we sift and sort? How do we choose? And I know that was part of my process in pulling my pictures together, which I have up on a collaborative space that I can show you later if you like. But how do we decide what's important? What do we decide is the right length? Who are we writing or creating it for, ourselves or others, right? Because there are other people I'm sure that would love to read a lot, right? So who are we creating it for? What's the purpose? And you also spoke about telling people what they meant to you. And that's something that we don't always hear in obituaries, right? I mean, we might talk about relationships or happy ceremonies or experiences, but it's almost, to me, almost like a love letter that you might be talking about in terms of writing love letters to the people in your family so that they have those, and that might be different than an obituary. And I'm wondering if there are other thoughts to share about writing obituaries, what you've seen, what you imagine, or what you've done.
I would like to share. For me, I have never thought about writing obituary, nor I had any experience. So when I start to think about this, and I started to collect the material for this project, I was thinking, who am I wanting to share this? And my photos were all about my family, my son, and my close family. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I would like to thank them and let them know that I'm grateful for meeting them in my life. And also I want to reassure them that even though I died, don't be sad. I had good memory with you all. So so I want to share with them that we had good time. And then so I started to think about the movements that we had in the pictures. So it's like a thank you note for me when I start to think about my own obituary. Yes, thank you.
Oh, how beautiful. How beautiful to talk in terms of thanking others, how outwardly oriented, and also knowing that grieving is also a form of loving. And it's a process, right? Yeah. Yes. Yes, there's much to be said about grief. And I think that's another workshop. Because it is a big topic. But I love the fact that we're getting so many different points of view as to what this obituary is. And I know that for me, when my dad passed in 2015, I couldn't even think of writing an obituary. Didn't even know where to begin. And so so in essence, we had meaning I organized, one of my best friends came in from California, and we created a memorial service, and I had pictures blown up of him of different times of his life, with my mom and with his family, you know, all that prior to me, and with me and with our family. And that became the memorial, and that became essentially my obituary for him, was the sharing of those experiences and something very brief with people in a gathering. And that's how I handle it. So there are just so many ways to do this. And I think giving ourselves permission and talking with those in our family about how we wish for it to be done for ourselves and others is essential. Opening up those conversations, knowing that they can also be frightening. I mean, as we talked about a little bit in the beginning, the resistance to thinking about this for ourselves and for others, and recognizing the people we talk to may feel the same way. So we know a bit about writing obituaries because we have read them. We've talked a bit about it now. How might we design some visual obituaries? I know that you all have been gathering up materials, and I'm wondering what you're gathering and what you're thinking. Marilyn, I saw your shoulders go up and down.
I don't want to hog too much of the bandwidth here, Jill, but I started working on mine this morning, and I did it as a map because I was born in San Francisco. I grew up in Spain. I went to school in England and then in France, and then I moved to Boston. And so it was a kind of a journey thing, and it was much easier to visualize it as a map. So that's how I started.
Terrific. Oh, and I can't wait to see that, because I would love to know, because for me, a map, oh my gosh, that could be so many things, right? It could be a world map. It could be a hand-drawn map. It could be an antique map. It could be a treasure map. I mean, oh my gosh, so many possibilities. Beautiful. Thanks, Allison.
I guess as I started to gather materials, mine was a chronology. I'm a Virgo,
Okay.
and I want to put everything in order. And then I want to start from, from where I started and all the main events in my life, and kind of how I got to be where I am now. But it's long, and as yours, Allison, it took many paths, and it was a lot to weave together. And of course, not
Absolutely.
done. It's just
Well, Marilyn, you're not done. That's why it's not done. In one sense, right? But, and so I love the juxtaposition of what you said earlier about reading someone else's obituary, and it was long and it went on and that kind of thing. And now you talking with us about how full yours is, right? Yeah, so something to think about. Absolutely. And I find that that I remain hungry for details of relatives past. And so I like having source information, because I can disregard it, but if it's not there, I don't have it at all. Yeah. So I'm wondering, Gloria, Sue, Chloe, if you have thoughts about how you're putting yours together, what you've gathered up, what your vision is, and what your questions are.
For me, when I start to look for material, I start from the photos that I have, because I didn't have much time. So I could only look for something handy. But in the process, I found that maybe that's not enough. So I might have to, I may need more time to look for maybe the physical photo album instead of just the photo in my Google album. So, and then I start to think, when should I start? Maybe from my childhood. But I don't have those photos. So, and then I thought, so it could be very long, like so many photos, so many memories. I have to narrow it down. So I thought, who do I want to present these photos or this message to? And then I just narrowed down to some important moments. But then I couldn't have the pictures. So, and then I think maybe I need more time. So like you said, maybe I need like another month to start planning for this.
Sure.
Yeah, so my mind was about some important moments in my life. Yes, and important peoples. Yes.
So true. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I listen, I'm just smiling, because I hear so much that resonates. I mean, there's the experience, I think, is similar in many ways for all of us. And it's Gloria reminds me of, so little time, so much in so little time. And I've found myself going down rabbit holes, which is, you get stuck on that foothold, and then, oh, what about this? And then you go, and then you have to fix dinner, and, and then it's 2 days later and something else comes up. And I started actually, oh gosh, I years ago, because my youngest adult son said, "You never talk about your family," which is true. I don't, because my parents died before he was born. So, if you don't have people that reinforce the stories in your family, guess what? They disappear. And so, but once I started going down there, it was like, oh, now let's see, who can I ask to find out the details of this? And so it's never been finished. In fact, I think I was going to do this mega work. The mega work I don't think is going to ever get done. And then I started feeling the urgency of like, hey, you know, I'm getting older. I better get something out there because I would like an obituary before I die. And then it sort of became an obligation rather than an exploration that I enjoyed, you know,
Mhm.
duty bound. And Jill, when you said that you wrote your dad's obituary, that sounds really pressure to get it all together in a short period of time. I wonder how people do that for
Mhm.
family members if they haven't, you know, been thinking about it or doing some preparation like this.
Absolutely. And so I love that question. And so I'm just going to answer it briefly just because I'm all, and this is me being me, but I'm all about giving permission people to see things differently. And that doesn't make it easy. But when my dad passed, it was literally on a Sunday in the summertime. Most of our very small family was out of the country. This was, of course, pre-COVID. And I was also heading to a retreat that I had signed up for 6 months earlier, 2 days later. And I said, we are not doing a funeral now because we can't get the family here. And my dad would have wanted me to go on this retreat. It was a pure spirit retreat. So if any of you know Christina Baldwin and Anne Linnea, incredible work. And so it was my decision because I'm the only one in my family, you know, I am the daughter and my mom was no longer alive. And my husband was fine with that. And my daughter was not. And she was, how can you do this? And I said, because we can't bring everyone together. This can't be the kind of proper ceremony that I would like. And so I said, we'll do a memorial. And we did a memorial a month later. And we had the time to gather not only family, but friends. People came from far away. Oh, we did this beautiful sit down lunch. I mean, and everyone shared a story about him. And this was not something we could have done if we had had the pressure to do it in a short period of time. And I understand not everyone works within that environment. There may be religious or customary restraints or constraints that keep you from doing that. But I'm always going to think about what is best and how can I get some perspective on what is best in this situation and then work to make it happen. So I offer that up to not, I was certainly no miraculous woman that pulled it all together in a really short period of time. I don't want you to believe that, but I do want you to hear the possibility of expanding the idea of what is possible in these situations. Thank you, Allison, also for mentioning in the chat about curation, and it is definitely a task of curation. And so I'm just going to share for a quick minute because I had a thought as I was doing this. So I literally did much of what you're talking about. So this is an online collaborative space that you're looking at right now that is called Miro. And so it is a board. And as you can see, I have a number of pictures here, and these are really important pictures to me. And I can, as some of you have said, think back over my life and go, oh, I've got a hole missing there. Oh, I don't have a picture of Catherine or my medical service trip to Nepal. I don't have this and I don't have that. But when I can see everything laid out, I mean, look at this. I mean, come on, that's my first passport. You know, so, and it's just, and below that, that was my wedding. Yes, that's me in that raspberry sherbet colored dress. And my parents and my daughter and scuba diving with my dad and being in Australia and just, oh, and me on the telephone, that's really a fit. My best friend here when I was growing up. So as I start to look at these, I not only want to collect the photos, what I want to do is oops, so sorry, we shouldn't be going that small. I want to tell the story about each of them. And so maybe that, and I'm not sure it will be in an online collaborative space that I do that. Oh, now we're going very big. This is having a mind of its own. But the big picture here for me is it's not only the pictures, it's the little stories that go with them that I want to share with people. Because when my friend, you see my, up there at the top, I'm with my friend Nancy Bierman and we're holding bunny rabbits. My dog killed the mom and we had to raise the rabbits with little eyedroppers. But I'm showing how important she was to me in my life and how she shaped me, right? So this is my way to not only talk about my own life, but to share with other people about how important they were to me. And I think, Gloria, that also gets at some of what you were talking about. Right. And so this is certainly just a first draft. It's just a place where I'm putting everything and laying it all out. It is not a finished piece, but it makes me think like, oh, I can see the big picture. I can see the details. I know where there are some holes that I want to fill in. And I know that I want to tell little stories, probably handwritten little stories, just on little cards to bring it all together for people. So that's a thought. And I know you all have thoughts also. It is my intention to split you up into pairs to have some time to work together on your visual obituary. And I know you're also all at different places in this process. It gives you a chance to perhaps share what you've worked on, because I think part of sharing your story of what you're doing and perhaps showing a little bit of it, even if it's holding it up or sharing a screen, will make it even more real for you. And also hopefully get you comfortable with the process of talking about this with someone. And here you're starting with someone that you know is already interested and is presenting as a positive force and ready to hear what you have to say. And so I'm wondering how that feels to all of you. I mean, that is definitely my plan, but I also want to check in with each of you. How does that feel? Splitting you into pairs, doing some work, and sharing. All right, there are smiles around the room. I'm so happy that that I'm still here as host, and so can create our breakout groups. So let me just take a peek at that. There we go. And so I'm going to create 2 different rooms. It will be spontaneous as it is. We are at 10 minutes before the hour, wherever your hour may be, as we are around the globe. And so I would anticipate us coming back. What I'll do is I'll check in with you in 40 minutes, all right, because that should give you time to talk with each other a bit, talk about what your project is, where you are, what you hope for, and move forward. You get to design it whatever way you want your time together, but those would be my suggestions. Do you have questions or thoughts about that? I'm going to take that as a no. Say it again. The time, 40 minutes. And understanding that you'll spend part of it talking, probably some of it working, coming back together and talking some more. You will manage the time in the way that suits you best. Okay, there we go. And I'm alone. And so I will pause the recording. Excellent. Good to see you back, Sue. I'm sure your partner will be here shortly. There we go. There's Gloria. Yes. All right. And we'll wait for Allison and Marilyn. And happily, Chloe is back with us. All right. Good to see you, Allison and Marilyn. And we're saying hello to Sue and Gloria, and happily, Chloe is back with us. We are recording again. And I can't wait to hear what your experience was like. And so that means, what was it like to partner up with someone to share a bit of what you're thinking and you've been working on, to maybe get some questions, respond to questions, take any piece of that you like. Please start us off, Sue. Yes, but we can't hear you.
I just want to say it's a bit of a tease. I mean, because it's sort of like we just pulled the first string of the ribbon and it's like, hey, I can't even get into the box, right? So we had a very rich conversation, I think. So it was great.
Excellent.
And I'm going to put my email for Gloria in the chat, just because I think there might be an opportunity in the future to connect.
Fantastic. I'm so delighted to hear that. Thanks so much. Would you care to say anything more? And this is your choice. I am asking the question about what made it great.
Yeah, I could say something else. And then I'd love to hear from Gloria too. There's a 25-year age difference in the two of us. And so our perspectives, and yet I would say, and Gloria, you're going to have to say, oh, no, that's not true, or that is true. Okay. But what I felt is that still on, on things that are meaningful to you, there's so much that resonates. And there was just, I felt a lot of learning both ways. And it was just very enjoyable in terms of we're in different points of the process, but talked a lot about who this is for, what we want, what's driving us to do this, those kinds of things. Gloria, what would you say?
Okay. Yeah, this is right, correct. Well, for me, it is a very rich interaction and exchange. As we just finished the breakout room in the end of the conversation, I was thinking, oh, I didn't have time to do the artwork, to do the visual. But then I thought, oh, this is even better because I had the chance to really understand and my own story and also the story of another person's. And I got so much inspiration from the conversations. So even though I may not have time to do the beautiful visual obituary work, but I have so much insight. I feel like I'm ready to start the process. And it's not like, oh, I have to collect all these material before the class tonight, but I have a long journey. I still have time to do it. And we shared about some ideas, how to do it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity for me to meet all of you. Thank you.
How wonderful, Gloria. Thank you. And thank you, Sue. It makes my heart sing to hear you say those things. How wonderful. And I'm wondering, Marilyn, Allison, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What was the experience like?
I guess I can jump in and say, I loved it. We just had a lot to share about some of the details of our lives. We hardly scratched the surface, but we made just a very good connection. I enjoyed it a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you.
One thing that is really resonating with me, and I
Allison, you're showing on mute, although I can hear you. So there we go. Perhaps better.
Okay, is that better? Yeah. So one thing Marilyn said that really resonated for me and for others, I think, is she felt that we had been given to open this up. And I'm sorry about my internet connection. Is this better?
It's better now. It seemed as if you were saying we've been given permission.
Yes.
Am I guessing?
To open up. Yeah. And I feel like some things that we think are ordinary about our lives are actually extraordinary. And I think that's something that would be a good idea for us all to find the extraordinary in perceived ordinary. Because it's not necessarily, this is why they were encouraging us. Historians were encouraging us at the start of the pandemic to keep a pandemic diary, because your everyday very toilet paper right now. This is going to be very interesting to historians in the future. So making the ordinary, because it will in 100 years, no one's looking at my thing. It will be really an artifact extraordinary.
Absolutely. And so I think, Allison, that also gets at one of the comments or questions you came in with, which is 100 years from now, right? People that I know will no longer be alive and will not be remembering me. And so how do we make a difference? Is it the writing? Is it the time capsule? Is it a visual? Is it showing the extraordinary aspects of our ordinary and everyday lives and the relationships that we have? Yeah, Chloe and I were having a rich conversation as you were all working, and I started, of course, taking notes on what she was saying because that's what I do. I was talking about, and of course I started crying and I was talking about this, so I'll just be completely frank about that. But I started saying that one of the pictures that I had showed you is a friend of mine, and she doesn't know that she's in this creation that I am developing, and that I can't wait to show it to her, to show her how much she matters to me. Because we don't, and here I go, I'm gonna go again, but we don't talk that frequently, but we are like soul sisters, right? And so it's, it felt like, to me, almost a love letter, that showing people my visual obituary of the highlights of my life, of who mattered to me, and writing little stories about it, was really like sending them a little love letter. And that has also a completely different feel to it. One of the things Chloe and I talked about, and Chloe, I of course invite you, because we did have a rich conversation, if you would like to add anything. But sometimes in families, we don't always have the smoothest relationships. There can be a gap in our relationship. There can be some difficulty. And it makes me think that perhaps if we can phrase this, not so much that I was in a workshop and we created a visual obituary. Instead, perhaps I was in a workshop, or I've been thinking about the memories that have been created in my life, the highlights, the things that are important to me, and I want to memorialize them. And you are a part of that. And that's our foundation, and that's our history. And how do we share that with people? That it may take, as we talk about resistance to this whole topic in American society, and I'm sure others also, but I'm not about to talk about them, but just this resistance to talking about dying and death and preparation and doing the best we can given the circumstances that we have in terms of preparation. And so while I'm not one to be euphemistic, I might be metaphorical. So I'm not going to make it all, rainbows and unicorns. I am going to talk, though, about it in a way that people can hear it, so that it can sink in, that it can resonate, and it can become part of a future, the present and the future. Allison.
So one thing that Marilyn said was that this is a good preparation for writing a memoir. And I think that if you build this workshop as working on a visual memoir, but then when people actually sign up and show up, you say, actually, this is really writing or drawing your visual obituary, but that the process of doing that is actually the process of writing a memoir. But it doesn't have to be a 300-page tome. It can be a sheet of paper. So that's just a suggestion, Jill, because it is something that frightens some people off, and it doesn't frighten me off, but I think it's not dishonest. It's not a dishonest representation of what this experience has been for me. I like the obituary angle because it really focuses the mind, very much. But it's also really a memoir process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. And I think that is a way into the conversation, to talk about sharing the highlights of our lives, sharing our memories, digging into our foundations. You know, Chloe and I were also talking, I was talking about my personal lineage chart that I'm created for my program, and how my metaphor is a tree, and how the roots are my family and my education and the experiences that I've had, some of them that move up into the tree and become the branches and the fruit and the person that I have become. And so that to me feels like another possibility. I think there are so many different ways to go with this that invite people into the conversation. And some people won't touch it any other way. And if we want to reach the most people, then we find a way to meet them where they're at, and perhaps take them where they want and need to go. Yeah. Chloe, I don't want to leave you out. I would be happy to have you contribute if that's comfortable for you, and if you feel you have something to contribute at this point. And the answer may be yes or maybe no. We can't hear you.
Well, I think one of the things that came out of my conversation with Jill was that, you know, if there is some family estrangement or conflict in families, it can leave you leaving a little bit fragmented. And so it seems like working on something like this could actually be healing, because you're not just looking at the hiccups or difficult things, but, you know, digging into the whole story. So.
Absolutely. So let's take a breath for a moment and think about where we began this evening. I'm wondering if you will think back to your planning for being here. So reading about the announcement, gathering up the materials once you receive the information about what you should have on hand, perhaps starting that process, or at least thinking about that process, coming here, being together, hearing stories, sharing your story, being in the present moment, and yet soon we will be going our separate ways. I'm wondering what that experience has been like for you and what you're taking away. And if you'd care to share perhaps a next step, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, I would like to share. When I first read the poster, I was very excited about all the visual image and then stuff. I found, oh, so beautiful. And I like it so much. So I just registered. Usually I don't like registering like midnight classes, but oh, this is wonderful. So I registered. And as I received the package, the list of work, and I found, oh, I didn't know that. I was just thinking about having this piece of obituary artwork, but oh, this is really a process. Oh, very good. And then as I went through the process, I found that it's more than what I thought. And I also reflect on the process, and I realized that maybe my mind is attached with the outcome. So I was, oh, maybe by the end of this class, I would have this beautiful work. But my reflection is that it's all about the process, and I really enjoy having the conversation with Sue, which is something I didn't expect. And I used to have anxiety speaking with people, but in the process, I feel like very safe, and I really enjoy the conversation. And so it's, I don't know how to describe the feeling, but I feel very rich, and I would start this process. It's gonna be the beginning, and it's gonna be ongoing. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful, Gloria.
Jill, I wonder if I could ask you if you could comment on, is it Miro, or I was intrigued with that. I don't know anything about that, and it looked like a place I might want to start with a meaningful.
Absolutely. And so Sue, it is definitely Miro, like the artist, and I would be happy to offer anyone, and we could do it together if you wanted, if we found a time that was convenient, or I'm happy to meet up with folks separately. And I know Allison knows how to use it because we use it together in the group that we're in, but I'm happy to give people a quick spin around Miro. It takes 15 or 20 minutes and you will be on your way using this online collaborative space. And I have used it for all kinds of projects. I find it a wonderful place to do some brainstorming or organizing of ideas. And I have the one picture I didn't put up in the background as we do a deep dive for just a second, because I have a picture of myself from this summer kayaking when I was with my daughter, and I'm going to put that as the background, I think, to everything, and everything is going to go on top of that. So you can import all kinds of photos and files. You can put little handwritten notes, take a picture of it and pop it up there. So it's a really unique, using an online collaborative space is a very unique experience. There are several different types of online collaborative spaces, but I'd be happy to spend some time with you and anyone else that's interested. So as you know, my email is jill@jillgreenbaum.com. Get in touch with me and we will do it.
Okay.
Yeah, super fun. And would you care to add, since you have the floor at this very moment, the talking piece, so to speak, would you care to add anything in terms of how you came here, how you're leaving here, or perhaps next steps?
Probably very different. As I said in the beginning, I am 1 week post-op, a hip replacement. I think I signed up very belatedly because I didn't know what kind of shape I'd be in, whether I'd be able to get through it or not. And so I really hadn't prepared that much. And my sense was that I was just eager to learn, to hear what other people had to say, and was a little intimidated when I heard there were breakout rooms. I thought, oh my goodness, I really haven't done my homework, but we had a good time, I think, Gloria and I. So, and I really appreciate just some of the practical stuff you put out. The key questions, who's your audience, I think is right up there, because as you said, there are pieces that the one thing that you shared where leaving blanks, there's certain things that you would do for different audiences, clearly. Some of those practical things were really helpful. And I love the idea, who mentioned it? I guess it was Marilyn, about the idea of reframing obituary into who do you want to say thank you to and what do you want to say to them? I just think that's beautiful. So
thank you, Sue. Allison.
As you know, I had planned to go to my other meeting and then catch this afterwards. Am I cutting out again? Sorry.
You're back now.
I'm back. But I'm so grateful because I don't think that it would have been the same just catching the recording afterwards. It was a wonderful connection that Marilyn and I made. And we talked about some pretty deep stuff. That was, for me, the biggest value out of this workshop. So thank you, Marilyn, and thank you to all of you. And Sue and Gloria, can I just say, I have tremendous admiration for both of you. Gloria, I go to bed at 9, and I can't even imagine staying up this late. And then Sue, good God, good for you. Anyway, thank you for coming, both of you.
I was going to say, I go to bed at 9. There's nothing special about my bedtime. I've enjoyed, this is a wonderful group of women.
Yeah.
It's really terrific. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. I'm so glad. Marilyn, would you care to share something? And the choice is yours.
I had signed up to take this several months ago, and I think we had Hurricane
I remember.
Ian, so I wouldn't be able to do it. And as this day came forward, I thought, well, maybe they'll have it or maybe they won't, and I'm not going to be ready. And if I don't hear, then but then I got confirmation, and I had to really set my mind to gathering what was important. And it's been such a good process.
Mhm.
We're going to be soon putting our house for sale and moving to a condo. And I have all those bins full of treasures and my family genealogy. And this will give me a focus, a funnel to figure out, what really matters and, what do I really want to say and to who? This has given me so much to think about. And I'm so glad I got here. And I thank you, Jill, and for all of you for being a part of this, because it was grand. I so enjoyed it.
Thank you, Marilyn. Chloe, would you like to add something? Once again, the choice is yours. We're not hearing you, hon.
This has definitely given me a lot of food for thought, and I really enjoyed everyone and all of the discussions, and I feel like I just want to go do some journaling and write.
How wonderful. And I want to thank all of you for being present tonight. What a wonderful and rich experience it has been for me to be with you, to hear your questions, your perspectives, to hear what you're taking away from this. And I have to say that every time I do this, it is a deeper and richer experience for me. And to me, this feels really like a spiral of transformation. Each and every time it becomes deeper. The first time I did it, it was, the visual that I showed you at the beginning. It was really this in response to a course, and I did it very quickly. When I did it for the folks in the retirement community, they wanted another session later on so they could gather more materials and share more and ask questions and be in touch with me. And so I did a bigger piece. When I did it for my colleagues who are visual practitioners, there was a lot more drawing involved, and it had a different kind of focus, and it took me in a different direction. And then for our gathering today, knowing that I was going to be in Belgium and I wasn't going to be holding up photos at home or anything like that, I shifted to an online space. But then I could do so much more because, like, oh my gosh, I can take pictures of all three of the passports that I have aside from my current one. And what do those mean to me? I mean, that's one of the things that Chloe and I talked about, which was that those passports, it's really, it's a metaphor for me, right? It's not just I can visit every country. I'm visiting parts of my life through that passport, going through the pages, being in Africa when I was 10 years old, when I was 13 years old, traveling to other countries, and just the rich memories that are contained in that little book. Right. So it feels like a passport or a journey that I'm on. Each and every time I do this, it becomes richer and more full for me. So perhaps that's something to keep in mind also. You may create something now and you may revisit it in a few months or in a year or so. And really, I would say that one of my takeaways is that I have never thought about this process before as a love letter to the people that matter to me. A recognition of how rich my life has been, mostly because of them and the experiences that I've had. And that feels to me like a wonderful opportunity to live on, maybe not 100 years, but to live on in people's hearts. Yeah. And so I have no glasses on, so I can't read that. So let me see. My 6-word memoir. Thank you, Allison. Absolutely. It has been wonderful to spend time with you this evening. I think we're all on evening. Well, no, Allison, you're more daytime. So we have really spanned the globe. We have spanned the time zones. It has been a wonderful experience. I would, of course, love to hear from all of you about how you're doing and what you're doing, sharing your visual obituaries with me and or with us if you choose to. I can also create a Miro board, and people can post what they have created there. Take a picture of it And I can do all the details around that. So Chloe, there is another mailing that goes out afterwards, correct? As a kind of follow-up. So I can just write a little piece that says how we can make that happen if we want to share our creations or our questions along the way. And of course, I'd be happy to teach people about Miro also, so you can feel comfortable with that. It has been my pleasure to be with all of you this evening. Thank you so much for making time in your busy schedules and sharing your thoughts and your feelings. It's been a pleasure.